It was supposed to be an ordinary afternoon. The playground sat quietly beneath a soft golden sky, its swings creaking gently in the breeze, the slide still warm from the fading sun. Daniel had only stopped for a moment, just to let the puppy stretch its legs. The little golden retriever, barely a few months old, had been full of energy all day, but now something felt different. The puppy slowed, then stopped, right in front of the old metal slide. Daniel tugged lightly on the leash. "Come on, buddy," he murmured with a soft smile. But the puppy didn't move. Instead, it stared completely still at the base of the slide. Its ears perked. Its body stiffened. Then it whimpered. Not loud, not sharp, just uneasy. Daniel frowned. The puppy took a step forward, sniffing carefully, then suddenly sat down, refusing to go any closer. When Daniel tried to guide it away, it resisted, digging its tiny paws into the sand, letting out a low, anxious whine. "Hey, what's wrong?" Daniel whispered, kneeling beside it. The air felt heavier now. The puppy's eyes didn't leave the slide. It wasn't playing. It wasn't curious. It was reacting, as if it recognized something. Daniel followed its gaze, his heartbeat slowing, then quickening again as he leaned closer to the metal surface. And that's when he noticed it. Faint scratched into the side of the slide. A name. Moments later, everything changed. Before we continue, remember to like, share, and subscribe for more heart-touching dog stories. And tell me, where are you watching from? The afternoon had settled into that soft, golden stillness that only came at the end of a long day. Not quite evening, but no longer day. The kind of quiet that made everything feel slower, gentler. Daniel walked along the narrow path beside the playground, his sneakers brushing lightly against the gravel. The air carried the faint scent of warm metal, dry grass, and something sweet drifting from a nearby bakery down the street. Beside him, the puppy trotted with small, uneven steps. Too big for its paws, too curious for its own good. A golden retriever, barely 3 months old. Its fur caught the sunlight like soft threads of honey, glowing with every movement. Its tail swayed constantly, sometimes too fast, sometimes out of rhythm, like it hadn't quite figured out how to control it yet. Daniel smiled. "Easy there," he murmured. The leash hung loose in his hand. He wasn't really guiding the puppy, just following along. It had been 3 days since he brought him home. 3 quiet mornings. 3 restless nights. 3 slow, careful steps into something new. Daniel hadn't planned for a dog. Not really. But sometimes life didn't wait for plans. Sometimes it just placed something in front of you and asked you to trust it. He paused near the edge of the playground. The place was empty. A set of swings creaked softly in the breeze, moving just enough to remind you the world hadn't stopped completely. The slide stood off to the side, old, slightly faded, its metal surface dulled by years of sun and weather. It wasn't broken, just worn, like it had stories it didn't tell anymore. Daniel exhaled slowly. "This works," he said under his breath. The puppy didn't answer. Of course it didn't. But it tugged forward gently, nose low to the ground, sniffing everything in short, curious bursts. Sand, leaves, the base of a bench, a forgotten candy wrapper half buried near the edge of the play area. Normal things. Safe things. Daniel let go of a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. For a moment it felt easy. He stepped off the path and onto the soft sand, the grain shifting quietly under his weight. The puppy followed without hesitation, tail wagging a little faster now. A small breeze passed through, warm but fading. Daniel glanced up at the sky. The light was changing. That slow shift toward evening, where everything looked just a little softer, a little more distant. He liked this time of day. Always had. It didn't ask anything from you. It didn't expect you to be anything more than present. The puppy wandered a few feet ahead, its leash stretching just enough to create a gentle line between them. It sniffed the bottom of a swing, then turned in a small circle, then moved toward the slide without much thought. Just exploring. Just being what it was. Daniel watched with a quiet kind of focus. Not anxious. Just aware. He was still learning. Every movement. Every sound. Every small shift in behavior. It all felt important. Like pieces of something he didn't fully understand yet. "Hey," he called softly. The puppy paused for a second, glancing back at him with wide, dark eyes. Then it continued forward, toward the slide. The metal surface reflected the fading light, casting a faint glow across the sand beneath it. The ladder stood to the side, its paint chipped in small places, edges softened by time. Nothing unusual, nothing out of place. The puppy reached the base of the slide and stopped. Just stopped. Daniel blinked. First, he didn't think anything of it. The puppy had been stopping a lot, getting distracted, losing focus, pausing to sniff something invisible or stare at something only it seemed to notice. It was normal. Puppies were like that. Unpredictable. Curious. Easily distracted. He took a few steps closer. "Come on, buddy," he said gently. The leash tightened slightly as he gave a soft tug. The puppy didn't move. Its body had changed. Subtly but clearly. The tail still. The ears tilted forward. The head lower than before. Daniel slowed his steps. Something in that posture felt different. "Hey," he murmured again, softer this time. The puppy took a single step forward, then froze. Its nose hovered just above the sand near the edge of the slide. Sniffed once, twice, then lifted its head slightly, not toward Daniel but toward the metal surface, and held there, still, listening. Daniel felt a small flicker of uncertainty. "Is something there?" he asked quietly, almost to himself. He glanced around. The playground remained empty. No movement. No sound except the faint creak of the swings and the distant hum of traffic somewhere beyond the trees. Nothing obvious. Nothing threatening. He stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "It's okay," he said. The words came out calm, steady, but something in his chest had shifted. The puppy let out a soft sound. Not a bark. Not quite a whine. Something in between. Low. Uneasy. Daniel frowned. "That's new," he whispered. He crouched down slowly, bringing himself closer to the puppy's level. The sand pressed softly beneath his knees as he leaned forward, trying to see what had caught its attention. "Hey, what is it?" The puppy didn't look at him. Didn't move. Its gaze stayed fixed on the slide. On the metal. On something Daniel still couldn't see. He reached out, placing a gentle hand along the puppy's back. Warm. Soft. But tense. The muscles beneath its fur were tight, holding. Not relaxed. Not playful. Alert. Daniel felt it immediately. And that small flicker of uncertainty grew. "It's nothing," he said quietly. More to himself than the puppy. He gave the leash another light pull. "Come on. Let's go." The puppy resisted. Not aggressively. Not forcefully. But enough. Its paws pressed into the sand, creating small indentations as it held its ground. A soft whine escaped again. Longer this time. More insistent. Daniel paused. He looked at the puppy. Really looked. The ears hadn't moved. The tail was still lowered. The eyes. Focused. Too focused. On something that wasn't obvious. "All right." Daniel exhaled slowly. He shifted his weight forward, leaning just a little closer to the slide. "Let's see what's got you so interested." The metal surface caught the last stretch of sunlight, reflecting it in a dull, uneven way. It wasn't smooth anymore. Small scratches covered parts of it, marks left behind by years of use. Normal wear. Nothing unusual. He leaned in closer. The puppy shifted slightly beside him, its body pressing nearer, as if trying to stay close while still keeping its attention fixed forward. Another soft sound. Quieter now. Almost like a warning. Daniel's eyes traced along the edge of the slide. Slowly. Carefully. And then, he stopped. His breath caught. Just for a second. There. Near the lower side. Faint. Almost hidden in the scratches. Lines. Not random. Not accidental. Carved. Daniel leaned in further, his eyes narrowing as he tried to make it out. The letters were uneven. Worn. But still there. A name. He didn't say it out loud. Not yet. The puppy shifted again, pressing closer. And in that quiet, fading light, something about that moment felt heavier than it should have. Daniel swallowed slowly. His hand tightened slightly on the leash. And for the first time since they arrived, he didn't feel like this was just an ordinary stop at the park. The puppy let out one more soft whine. Low. Uneasy. as if it had been waiting for this exact moment. Daniel stared at the carved name, his mind beginning to catch up with something he couldn't yet explain. And somewhere deep in that stillness, a quiet realization began to form. Something wasn't right. Something about this place, this slide, this name, it meant something. He just didn't know what yet. But he was about to find out. Daniel didn't speak for a moment. He stayed crouched there, one hand resting lightly against the puppy's back, the other still holding the leash. The carved letters on the slide blurred slightly as his eyes struggled to adjust in the fading light. He blinked, looked again. Still there, faint but deliberate. The puppy shifted closer, not forward but inward, as if the safest place suddenly was right beside him. Daniel exhaled slowly. "Okay," he whispered. His voice was softer now, careful, like he didn't want to disturb something fragile. He leaned back just a little, glancing at the puppy. Its body remained tense, ears angled forward, eyes locked on the same spot. Not curious, not playful, aware. He followed its gaze again. The name, carved unevenly into the metal, old but not forgotten. Daniel swallowed. "Did someone just write this?" he murmured almost instinctively. But even as he said it, he knew that wasn't right. The edges were worn, softened. Time had already passed over it. A lot of time. The puppy let out another small sound, a quiet whine that trembled at the end. Daniel felt it this time. Not just heard it, felt it. A ripple of unease moving through the still air. Hey, he said gently, running his hand along the puppy's neck. "It's okay. You're okay." The puppy didn't relax. Its breathing was shallow now, quick but controlled. Not panicked, just alert. Daniel looked around again. The playground remained empty. The swings creaked once, then stilled. The trees at the edge of the park swayed slightly, leaves whispering against each other in the soft wind. Everything looked normal. Everything sounded normal. But the feeling, that quiet, creeping tension, it stayed. He stood up slowly. "All right, that's enough exploring for today," he said, more firmly this time. He gave the leash a gentle pull. "Come on." The puppy didn't move. Daniel frowned. "Buddy." He tugged again, just a little stronger. The puppy's paws pressed deeper into the sand, holding, resisting, not pulling away, just refusing to go. Daniel paused. There was no aggression in it, no fear that caused it to bolt or panic. This was different, intentional, as if it had made a decision. "No?" Daniel asked quietly. The puppy didn't look at him. It stayed focused on the slide, on the name. A low sound vibrated in its throat again, soft, almost like a warning. Daniel felt a chill run through him. Not cold, just unexpected. He stepped forward again, closer to the slide this time. The puppy followed, but only half a step, then stopped again. Its body angled slightly now, placing itself between Daniel and the metal surface. Subtle, but clear. Daniel noticed. His brow furrowed. "What are you doing?" he asked under his breath. The puppy's tail remained low, not tucked, not wagging. Still, its posture had shifted into something protective. Not of itself, but of him. Daniel's grip on the leash loosened. He crouched again, slower this time, more deliberate. "Hey!" His voice dropped, gentler. "You don't like this, do you?" The puppy flicked one ear back at the sound of his voice, but its eyes didn't leave the slide. That was answer enough. Daniel looked at the metal again, at the carved name, at the small scratches surrounding it, layered over years of use. He leaned forward slightly. The puppy immediately stepped closer, pressing against his leg, blocking him. Daniel froze. "Okay," he said softly. That was new. He shifted his weight back just a little. The puppy relaxed. Barely, but enough for Daniel to notice. A pattern. A boundary. He looked down at the dog, then back at the slide, then at the name again. "What is it?" he whispered. The words weren't really a question anymore. More like a quiet admission. He didn't understand, but the puppy did. That much was becoming clear. A faint sound carried across the park. Footsteps. Distant. Daniel turned his head slightly, scanning the path behind them. An older man walked along the sidewalk, hands tucked into his jacket pockets, head slightly lowered as he moved at an unhurried pace. Normal. Everything still looked normal. Daniel exhaled again, slower this time. Maybe that's all this was. A moment. A strange pause. Dogs reacted to things people didn't notice all the time. Smells. Sounds. Shadows. Things that meant nothing. Or everything. He gave a small, reassuring nod to himself. All right, he said, straightening up. Let's not overthink it. He gave the leash another gentle pull. Come on, we're heading home. The puppy didn't resist this time. Not fully. But it hesitated. Its paws lifted slowly from the sand, one at a time, like it didn't want to leave. Daniel felt the tension ease slightly as they stepped back toward the path. But only slightly. He glanced over his shoulder once. Then again. The slide stood exactly as it had before. Still. Quiet. Unchanged. But now. Didn't feel the same. The puppy walked beside him, closer than before. Its body brushed lightly against his leg with each step. Not playful. Not distracted. Present. Focused. Daniel noticed the difference. You're sticking close now, huh? He murmured. The puppy didn't respond. But its ears flicked slightly, listening to everything. The gravel path crunched softly beneath their steps. The air cooled just a little more. Evening settling in. Daniel's mind drifted back to the name. The shape of the letters. The way they had been carved slowly, carefully. Not random. Not careless. Someone had taken their time. People do weird things, he muttered quietly, trying to rationalize it, trying to make it simple again. But the feeling didn't go away. That quiet pull. That subtle weight. They reached the edge of the park. Daniel paused. Just for a second. He didn't mean to. His body just stopped. The puppy noticed immediately. It turned its head back toward the playground. Toward the slide. A soft whine slipped out again. Quieter now. Almost reluctant. Daniel followed its gaze. The distance between them and the slide wasn't far. Maybe 20 steps. But it felt farther. He hesitated. Just for a moment. Then shook his head lightly. No, he said under his breath. Not today. He turned away. This time he didn't look back. The puppy followed. But slowly. Reluctantly. Its head turning once more over its shoulder as they stepped onto the sidewalk. And for a brief moment, just a fleeting second, Daniel had the strange feeling that they were leaving something unfinished behind. Something that wasn't done with them yet. The puppy's soft footsteps echoed beside him. Steady. Close. Unusually quiet for something so young. Daniel adjusted his grip on the leash. Tighter now. Not out of control, but out of awareness. He glanced down at the puppy. Hey, he said gently. We'll come back, all right? He wasn't sure why he said it. The words just came. The puppy looked up at him for the first time since they left the slide. Its eyes met his. Deep. Searching. Then it looked forward again. Still walking. Still close. The park faded behind them. The sound softened. And the moment, that strange, quiet moment, lingering just beneath the surface, stayed with them, waiting. By the time Daniel reached his apartment, the sky had turned a muted blue-gray. Evening had settled in fully now, quiet and steady. The streetlights flickered on one by one, casting soft pools of light along the sidewalk. Cars passed occasionally, their tires humming against the asphalt, but everything felt distant, contained. The puppy stayed close the entire walk home. Closer than before. No pulling. No sudden bursts of energy. No distracted wandering. Just steady. Daniel noticed it. Of course he did. But he didn't say anything. Not yet. Inside the apartment, the familiar warmth greeted them immediately. A faint scent of coffee still lingered in the air from earlier that morning. The living room lamp cast a soft yellow glow across the space, simple and quiet. Safe. Daniel closed the door behind them with a gentle click. That's better, he murmured. The puppy stepped inside, paused, and looked around. Not in its usual curious way. Not bounding forward or sniffing everything in sight. Just checking. Its ears twitched slightly, picking up the small, ordinary sounds of the apartment. The hum of the refrigerator. The faint ticking of the wall clock. Normal things. Daniel loosened the leash and unclipped it. There you go. The puppy didn't run off. Instead, it stayed near him watching. Daniel frowned slightly. Okay, that's new. He set the leash down by the door and moved toward the kitchen. The puppy followed immediately, its small paws making soft tapping sounds against the floor. Right behind him, closer than usual, Daniel grabbed a bowl and filled it with fresh water, setting it down near the corner. Drink, he said softly. The puppy hesitated, then stepped forward and took a few small sips. Quick. Distracted. Its head lifted again almost immediately. Listening. Daniel leaned against the counter, crossing his arms loosely. You're acting weird, you know that? His tone was light, casual, but his eyes stayed on the puppy, watching, trying to understand. The puppy shifted its weight, glancing toward the hallway, then back at him, still alert, still not settled. Daniel exhaled slowly. All right, he said under his breath. Let's not make this into something it's not. He pushed off the counter and walked into the living room. The puppy followed again, almost brushing against his leg as it moved. No space. No wandering. Just close. Daniel sank into the couch with a quiet sigh, running a hand over his face. Long day. Strange ending. He leaned his head back, staring up at the ceiling for a moment. The image of the slide drifted into his mind again. The metal surface. The fading light. The carved name. He sat up slightly. It's just a name, he muttered. People carve things into playgrounds all the time. Names. Dates. Initials. It didn't mean anything. Did it? He let out a small breath. Yeah. It doesn't mean anything. The puppy climbed onto the rug in front of him and sat down. Not curled up. Not relaxed. Sitting. Watching. Daniel noticed again. You gonna keep staring at me like that? He asked, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. The puppy's head tilted slightly. A small familiar gesture. But its eyes. Still serious. Still searching. Daniel shook his head lightly. You're fine, he said. Just a little tired, that's all. He reached down, gently rubbing behind the puppy's ears. Warm. Soft. The puppy leaned into the touch. Just slightly. Then pulled back. Not fully relaxing. Daniel's smile faded a little. Okay. He leaned back again, quieter this time, trying to let the moment pass. Trying to return to normal. The clock ticked steadily on the wall. 1 second at a time. The apartment remained calm. Still. But the feeling from the park hadn't left. It lingered. Subtle but present. Like something unfinished. The puppy suddenly turned its head toward the front door. Sharp. Immediate. Its ears lifted. Daniel followed its gaze. What? There was nothing. No knock. No footsteps. Just silence. The puppy stood up slowly. Walked a few steps toward the door. Stopped. Listen. Daniel felt a small knot form in his chest. Hey, he called softly. The puppy didn't respond. It stayed focused. Still. Then, after a long moment, it relaxed slightly, stepping back. Returning to him. Daniel exhaled. See, he said more firmly now. Nothing's there. He was convincing himself as much as the dog. The puppy climbed closer this time, settling near his feet. Finally. Some sign of rest. Daniel reached for the remote and turned on the TV, letting the low murmur of voices fill the room. A news channel flickered to life, the soft cadence of a reporter blending into the background. Noise helped. It always did. Made things feel grounded. Normal. He leaned back into the couch again, letting the sound wash over him. The puppy lay down but not fully. Its head stayed up. Eyes half open. Watching. Minutes passed. Slowly. Gradually, the tension in the room began to fade. Or at least it seemed to. Daniel's shoulders lowered. His breathing evened out. The earlier moment at the park began to feel distant. Less sharp. Less real. Just a weird coincidence, he murmured. The puppy didn't react. But its ears flicked slightly. Still listening. Always listening. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. Just to rest them. Just for a second. The hum of the TV. The ticking clock. The faint sounds of the city outside. Everything blended together. Soft. Steady. Safe. Then. A sound. Small. Barely there. A faint scratching noise. Daniel's eyes opened instantly. The puppy was already on its feet, facing the door, completely still. The scratching came again. Light. Irregular. Like something brushing against the wood. Daniel sat up slowly, his heartbeat picking up just slightly. Probably the wind, he said quietly. But the air outside had been still. He remembered that. The puppy took one careful step forward. Then another. Its body low. Not afraid. Cautious. Daniel stood. Moved closer. Each step slow and measured. The scratching stopped. Silence returned. He reached the door. Paused. His hand hovered near the handle. The puppy stood just behind him, close. Waiting. Daniel held his breath for a second. Then, he opened the door. Nothing. The hallway stretched out in front of him, empty and quiet. The overhead lights buzzed faintly, casting a pale glow across the floor. No movement. No sound. Daniel exhaled slowly. See, he said, turning slightly. There's nothing. He stopped. His eyes dropped. To the floor. Right in front of the door. Something small. Barely noticeable. A thin layer of dust had been disturbed. Faint marks. Like scratches. Or lines. Daniel crouched slowly, his mind sharpening again. The puppy leaned forward beside him, nose twitching. The marks weren't random. They followed a pattern. Curved. Uneven. Almost like letters. Daniel's chest tightened. No, he whispered. He leaned closer. Closer. Trying to make sense of it. Trying to see clearly. And then, the shape began to form. Familiar. Too familiar. His breath caught. The puppy let out a soft, low whine. Daniel stared at the faint markings on the floor. His mind racing now. Because somehow, someway, it looked like the same name. The one from the slide. And suddenly, ignoring it didn't feel like an option anymore. Daniel didn't move. He stayed crouched at the doorway, one hand resting lightly against the floor, the other braced against the frame. The hallway light flickered once, just briefly, then steadied again. The faint markings were still there. Soft, uneven, but unmistakable. He swallowed slowly. No, he whispered again. This time quieter. More uncertain. Behind him, the puppy let out a low whine. The kind that barely made a sound but carried weight. It stepped closer, its nose hovering just above the marks, sniffing carefully. Not rushed. Not frantic. Intentional. Daniel watched. Every small movement. Every shift. What are you doing? He murmured. The puppy traced the pattern slowly, its nose moving along the faint lines as if following something it already understood. Then it stopped, lifted its head, and looked out into the hallway. Still. Focused. Daniel felt his chest tighten. There was nothing there. No footsteps. No movement. No sound. Just the quiet hum of the overhead light. He exhaled sharply and pushed himself to his feet. All right. That's enough. His voice was firmer now. Not loud but controlled. It's just dust. Marks. Someone probably dragged something across the floor. The explanation came quickly. Too quickly. He knew it. But he held on to it anyway. The puppy didn't move. It stayed where it was, body angled slightly toward the hallway, ears forward, tail low and still. Watching. Waiting. Daniel stepped back into the apartment and gently pulled the door halfway closed. Come on, he said. Inside. The puppy hesitated. Just for a second. Then it turned and stepped in. But slowly. Reluctantly. Daniel shut the door fully this time. The click echoing softly in the quiet space. He stood there for a moment. Hand still on the handle. Listening. Nothing. No scratching. No movement. Just silence. See, he muttered. But the word felt empty. He turned away and walked back into the living room, his steps a little quicker now. The puppy followed, but not as closely as before. It paused halfway, turned its head back toward the door, then continued. Daniel noticed. Of course he did. He noticed everything now. You're making this worse, he said quietly. Not to the puppy, to himself. He sat down again, leaning forward this time, elbows resting on his knees. His hands came together, fingers interlocking tightly. The image of the slide returned. The carved name, the same shape, the same pattern, now here, at his door. He shook his head. No, no, that's not possible. The puppy walked in front of him and stopped, blocking his line of sight. Daniel blinked. What? The puppy stood there, still, looking at him. Its eyes steady, calm but intent. Not playful, not confused, focused. Daniel exhaled through his nose. You're not helping, he said softly. The puppy didn't move. It held its position, as if trying to keep his attention right there, right now. Daniel leaned back slightly, his shoulders tightening again. What do you want? The words slipped out before he could stop them. The puppy's ears flicked. Its head tilted just slightly. Then it turned, walked toward the door again, stopped, looked back. Daniel stared at it. A long, quiet moment passed between them. You want to go out? He asked. But even as he said it, he knew that wasn't right. The puppy didn't act excited, didn't wag its tail, didn't move toward the leash. It just stood there, waiting. Daniel rubbed his hands over his face slowly. This was getting ridiculous. It's been one strange afternoon, he muttered. That's all this is. He stood up, walked to the kitchen, grabbed a glass of water, drank it in one slow motion, trying to reset, trying to ground himself. The puppy didn't follow this time. It stayed near the door, watching. Daniel placed the glass down carefully, took a breath, then another. You're tired, he said louder now. As simple as that. He turned back toward the living room. The puppy was still there, unmoved, unshaken. A quiet pressure filled the space again, subtle but growing. Daniel felt it settle into his chest. Not panic, not fear, just weight, the kind that didn't leave easily. Okay, he said after a moment. Fine. He walked toward the door. Slowly, each step measured. The puppy straightened slightly as he approached, its posture shifting, not tense but ready. Daniel reached for the handle, paused. We're just checking, he said under his breath. The puppy didn't react. Daniel opened the door again. The hallway looked the same, empty, still. But the marks, they were gone. Daniel blinked. He stepped forward, crouching again. The floor was clean. No dust patterns, no lines, nothing. His hand hovered over the spot where they had been. What? The puppy stepped out beside him, sniffed the floor again, slower this time, more searching. Then it lifted its head and looked down the hallway, longer, further. Daniel followed its gaze. The hallway stretched out in a straight line, doors on either side, each one closed. At the far end, a small window let in the last traces of evening light. Dim, fading. Nothing moved. Nothing changed. And yet, the puppy took a step forward, then stopped. Its body angled again, slightly in front of Daniel, blocking, protective. Daniel felt it clearly now. That same instinct from the park. The same quiet message. Don't go further. He swallowed. You don't want me to go, do you? The puppy didn't look at him, but its stance didn't change. Daniel exhaled slowly. All right. He stepped back. The puppy relaxed just a little. Enough to notice. Enough to confirm it. Daniel closed the door again. This time more carefully. The click sounded louder than before. He stood there for a moment, then turned. The puppy followed him back into the living room. Closer again now, right at his side. Daniel sat down slowly, his movements quieter, more deliberate. The room felt different. Not unsafe, but no longer simple, no longer easy. The puppy climbed onto the rug again, but instead of lying down it sat upright, facing the door, watching. Daniel leaned back into the couch, his gaze drifting toward the ceiling again. But his mind stayed alert, turning, trying to connect something that didn't quite fit. The same name, he whispered, the words barely audible. The puppy's ear flicked again. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them. Slowly. We're going back tomorrow, he said. The decision came quietly, but firmly. The puppy shifted slightly. Not excited, not anxious, just acknowledging. Daniel nodded to himself. Yeah. His voice steadied. We're going to figure this out. The room fell into silence again. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was waiting. And somewhere beneath that quiet stillness, the answer was already beginning to take shape. Neither of them knew it yet, but they were already closer than they thought. Morning came slowly. A pale, quiet light slipped through the curtains, stretching across the floor in soft lines. The city outside hadn't fully woken yet, just the occasional passing car, a distant door closing, the faint rhythm of an early day beginning. Daniel stood in the kitchen, staring into his coffee. Steam curled upward, then fading. He hadn't slept much. Not fully. Every time he closed his eyes, the same images returned. The slide. The carved name. The faint markings at the door. And the puppy. Still. Watching. Knowing. He exhaled slowly and took a sip. It had to be nothing. It had to be. But the feeling from yesterday hadn't faded. If anything, it had settled deeper. Behind him, soft footsteps approached. The puppy. Quiet again. Calm but aware. Daniel glanced down. You're up early, he murmured. The puppy looked up at him, ears relaxed this time but its gaze steady. Present. Daniel crouched slightly, running a hand along its back. Warm. Soft. But this time less tense. Still alert. But not as tight as before. That's good, he said quietly. Means we're not completely losing it. The puppy's tail gave a small, slow wag. Just once. Then it stopped. Daniel straightened, finishing his coffee in one last sip. He set the mug down. All right, he said, more to himself than anything. We're going back. The puppy didn't react immediately, but its ears lifted slightly. Listening. Daniel grabbed the leash from the hook near the door. The small metal clip jingled softly as he picked it up, breaking the stillness of the morning. The puppy stepped closer. Not excited. Not bouncing. Just ready. Daniel noticed. You remember, don't you? He clipped the leash on gently. The puppy stood still waiting. Daniel took a breath. Then opened the door. The hallway looked the same. Clean. Quiet. Nothing unusual. He stepped out. Paused. Looked down. The floor was empty. No marks. No lines. Nothing. Daniel let out a slow breath. Good. But the relief didn't last long. The puppy moved forward slowly. Nose low. Sniffing. Not frantic. Focused. It stopped at the same spot from last night. Where the marks had been. It lingered there for a second. Then lifted its head. And continued walking. Daniel followed. Silently. The walk to the park felt shorter this time. Or maybe just quieter. The usual sounds were there, cars, distant voices, the hum of life, but they felt muted. Like they existed somewhere else. Separate. Daniel's thoughts stayed fixed. On one thing. The name. They reached the edge of the park. The same soft path. The same gentle breeze. The same quiet playground waiting ahead. But now, it didn't feel ordinary anymore. Daniel slowed his steps. The puppy did too. They moved together. In sync. Toward the slide. The sunlight was brighter this time. Reflecting off the metal surface more clearly. The scratches stood out more. The worn texture more visible in the daylight. Daniel's chest tightened slightly. He stepped onto the sand. Each step deliberate. Measured. The puppy walked beside him. Not pulling ahead this time. Not rushing. Staying close. As if it already knew where this was going. They stopped a few feet from the slide. The puppy froze. Just like yesterday. Same spot. Same posture. Ears forward. Tail still. Daniel swallowed. Okay, he whispered. I see it too. He stepped forward. Slowly. The puppy didn't move. Stayed right there watching. Daniel crouched near the base of the slide. His eyes tracing along the metal surface again. This time. Clearer. Easier. The name stood out more in the morning light. Each letter carved with care. Not rushed. Not messy. Intentional. Daniel leaned closer. His fingers hovered just above the surface. Then hesitantly he touched it. The metal was cool. Slightly rough where the carving had broken through the surface. He traced one letter. Then another. A name. Simple. But not random. There was something about it. Something that felt personal. Daniel pulled his hand back slowly. The puppy let out a soft sound behind him. Not a whine. Not a bark. Just a quiet acknowledgement. Daniel turned his head slightly. You knew, he said softly. The puppy didn't move, but its gaze stayed fixed. Steady. Daniel looked back at the name. Who were you? He whispered. The question hung in the air. Unanswered. But not empty. He sat there for a moment longer. Thinking. Trying to make sense of it. A playground. A carved name. A reaction strong enough to follow them home. It didn't add up. Not yet. But it was close. He stood up slowly, brushing the sand from his hands. We need to ask, he said quietly. The puppy's ears flicked. Daniel nodded to himself. Someone here has to know. He turned, scanning the park. For the first time it wasn't empty. A woman sat on a bench near the edge, reading something on her phone. A man walked slowly along the path with a small dog of his own. Normal people. Normal morning. Daniel hesitated for a second, then started walking. The puppy followed immediately. Still close. Still steady. They approached the bench first. The woman looked up as they neared. Polite. Neutral. Hi, Daniel said. Sorry to bother you. I just had a quick question. She smiled faintly. Sure. Daniel glanced back at the slide for a moment, then back at her. Do you come here often? She shrugged lightly. Sometimes. Why? Daniel hesitated, then spoke. There's a name carved into the slide. Her expression didn't change much. Yeah. There's a lot of those. Daniel nodded. Right. This one seemed older. She tilted her head slightly. Which name? Daniel swallowed. He said it quietly. The woman's smile faded. Just a little. Her eyes shifted not toward him but toward the slide. A brief pause. Then, yeah, she said softly. I've seen that one. Daniel's chest tightened. Do you know who it is? She hesitated. Just for a moment. Then shook her head. Not really. I think it's been there a long time. Her voice had changed. Subtly. Quieter. Daniel noticed. Was something connected to it? He asked carefully. The woman exhaled lightly. I'm not sure, she said. But. She paused, as if deciding whether to continue. The puppy stepped slightly forward. Not toward her, but toward the slide again. The woman noticed that too. Her eyes lingered on the dog for a second, then back at Daniel. You might want to ask Mr. Calloway, she said finally. He's been around here forever. Lives across the street. Daniel frowned slightly. Calloway. She nodded. Yeah, older guy. Walks here every morning. Daniel glanced around. The man with the small dog. Slow steps. Watching quietly. Him? Daniel asked. The woman followed his gaze. Yeah. Daniel nodded slowly. Thanks. They stepped away from the bench. Toward the man. The puppy stayed close. But its pace slowed slightly. As if it understood. They were getting closer now. Closer to something real. Daniel approached carefully. Excuse me, he said. The man looked up. Kind eyes. Weathered face. Morning, he replied. Daniel gave a small nod. Morning. I was told you might know something about the playground. About the names carved there. The man's expression shifted. Not dramatically. Just enough. His eyes moved past Daniel. Toward the slide. A long pause followed. Then, which name? He asked quietly. Daniel swallowed. He said it again. The man didn't respond immediately. His grip on the leash in his hand tightened slightly. The small dog beside him stayed calm but attentive. Daniel felt it. That shift. That weight. The man exhaled slowly. I was wondering when someone would ask about that again. Daniel's chest tightened. What do you mean? The man looked at him. Really looked this time. Then glanced down at the puppy. The way it stood. The way it watched. And something in his expression softened. Your dog noticed it first, didn't it? He said quietly. Daniel didn't answer right away. But the silence was enough. The man nodded. Yeah, he murmured. They usually do. Daniel felt a chill move through him. Not fear. Something deeper. What do you mean? He asked again. The man looked back at the slide. His voice lower now. Careful. That name, he said slowly, belongs to a boy. He paused. The air seemed to still around them. And then, he used to come here every day. Daniel felt his heartbeat rise. The puppy stepped closer to his leg. Quiet. Steady. The man continued. But one day, he stopped. Just for a second. As if the memory itself needed time. He didn't go home. Daniel's breath caught. The playground felt different now. Heavier. Full of something unseen. And suddenly, the name on the slide wasn't just a name anymore. It was a story. One that hadn't finished yet. The park felt quieter now. Not empty but still. As if the air itself had settled around the words. Daniel stood there. His hand loosely wrapped around the leash. His eyes fixed on the older man. He didn't go home? He repeated softly. The man nodded. Slowly. His gaze drifted back toward the slide. Not directly at it but somewhere near it. Like he wasn't just seeing the metal structure anymore. He was seeing something else. Something older. My name's Calloway, he said after a moment, his voice steady but low. I've lived across from this park for 40 years now. Daniel listened. The puppy stayed close to his leg, its body pressed lightly against him. Present. Calm. Calloway exhaled through his nose. That boy's name. He paused, glancing briefly at Daniel. It was Eli. The name settled into the space between them. Simple. Soft. But now heavy with meaning. Daniel swallowed. Eli, he repeated. Calloway nodded. He was about 7. Lived just 2 houses down from me. Always here after school. Always on that slide. A faint smile touched the man's face. Just for a second. He'd climb up, slide down over and over again. Like it was the best thing in the world. Daniel could almost see it. A small boy. Laughing. Running. The sound of shoes against metal. The echo of joy in a quiet park. The puppy shifted slightly. Its ears relaxed just a little. As if the tone of the story had changed. Calloway continued. His mother used to sit right over there. He nodded toward the bench near the tree. Always watching. Never far. Daniel followed the gesture. The bench looked ordinary. But now it didn't feel that way. What happened? Daniel asked quietly. Calloway's expression changed. The softness faded. Replaced by something heavier. More distant. It was late summer, he said. Hot day. Same as any other. He paused. Taking his time. Eli came to the park like always. His mom was with him at first, but she stepped away. Just for a few minutes. Said she needed to grab something from the house. Daniel felt his chest tighten. The puppy's body pressed closer. Calloway's voice lowered. When she came back. He stopped. The silence stretched. He was gone. Daniel's grip on the leash tightened slightly. Gone, he repeated. Calloway nodded once. No one saw anything. No one heard anything. 1 minute he was here, the next nothing. The words hung in the air. Heavy. Unsettling. Daniel glanced toward the slide again. The metal surface gleamed faintly in the morning light. Still. Unchanged. But now. It felt like it was holding something. Holding a moment that never resolved. They searched everywhere, Calloway continued. Police. Volunteers. Whole neighborhood. His eyes moved slowly across the park. They checked the woods, the streets. Every house within miles. Daniel listened. Every word pulling him deeper. But they never found him, Calloway said quietly. The puppy let out a soft breath. Barely audible. Daniel felt it more than heard it. Never, he asked. Calloway shook his head. Not a trace. The park seemed to grow even quieter. If that was possible. Daniel's mind raced. Trying to make sense of it. Trying to connect it to the slide. The name. The markings at his door. Who carved the name? He asked after a moment. Calloway's eyes softened again. His mother. Daniel looked at him. She came back here days after it happened. Sat at the bottom of that slide for hours. Calloway's voice slowed. Measured. Then one day she brought something sharp. Took her time. Carved his name right into the metal. Daniel pictured it. The uneven letters. The careful pressure. the quiet determination behind each line. She said, Calloway paused. If he ever came back, he'd know where to find her. The words settled deep. Daniel felt something shift inside him. Not fear. Something else. Something heavier but warmer. The puppy moved slightly, its head lifting. Listening. As if it understood more than it showed. What happened to her? Daniel asked softly. Calloway exhaled. She stayed for a while. Came here every day. Sat on that bench waiting. His gaze drifted again. But after a few months she stopped coming. A long pause followed. No one really knows where she went. Daniel nodded slowly. The story felt incomplete. Like something left open. Unfinished. The puppy suddenly turned its head. Back toward the slide. Sharp. Focused. Daniel noticed immediately. What is it? He whispered. The puppy didn't move forward. But its body shifted. Alert again. The same posture as yesterday. Calloway watched too. His expression changing slightly. They say dogs pick up on things we don't, he said quietly. Daniel looked at him. What kind of things? Calloway didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed on the puppy. Then, memories, he said. Daniel frowned slightly. That doesn't make sense. Calloway gave a small, thoughtful nod. Maybe not in the way we understand them. The puppy took one slow step forward. Then stopped. Its nose lifted slightly, catching something in the air. Daniel felt it again. That subtle shift. That quiet pull. Not toward fear, but toward something waiting. What are you sensing? He whispered. The puppy didn't respond, but it didn't look away. Calloway adjusted his grip on his own dog's leash. You said it noticed the name first? He asked. Daniel nodded. And then, he hesitated. Something else happened. Calloway waited. Daniel took a breath. There were marks at my door last night. In the dust. They looked like the same name. Calloway's expression stilled. Completely. Are you sure? He asked. Daniel nodded again. They were there. And then they were gone. The silence that followed felt different. Heavier. More focused. Calloway looked back at the slide. Then at the puppy. Then at Daniel. You might not want to ignore this, he said quietly. Daniel let out a small, uneasy breath. I wasn't planning to. The puppy shifted again. Closer now. Right beside him. Steady. Grounding. Calloway gave a slow nod. Sometimes, he said carefully, things that were left unfinished find their way back. Daniel felt those words settle. Deep. Uncomfortable. But not wrong. He looked down at the puppy. You think it's trying to show me something? Calloway didn't answer directly. He just looked at the dog again. At the way it stood. Calm. But certain. I think, he said slowly, it already is. The puppy finally moved. One small step toward the slide. Then another. Daniel followed without thinking. Drawn forward. Not by fear. But by something quieter. Something that felt important. The metal surface reflected the sunlight again. Bright. Clear. The carved name stood out more than ever. Daniel stopped a few feet away. His breath steady but his chest tight. Eli, he said softly. The puppy sat down beside him. Still. Focused. As if waiting for something. Daniel looked around the park again. At the bench. The trees. The open space. Everything seemed normal. And yet, it wasn't. Not anymore. Because now he knew. This wasn't just a name. This wasn't just a memory. It was something unfinished. Something still reaching. And somehow, someway, the puppy had felt it first. Daniel took a slow breath. Then another. Okay, he whispered. His voice steadier now. Then let's figure it out. The puppy didn't move. But its tail gave the smallest, quietest shift. And in that moment, for the first time since this began, Daniel didn't feel confused anymore. He felt guided. Like they weren't alone in this. Like something had been waiting. For someone to finally listen. The park held its breath. At least, that's how it felt to Daniel. The morning light had grown stronger, filling the open space with warmth, but something quieter lingered beneath it. Something that didn't belong to the present. Something older. Daniel stood near the slide, his eyes drifting from the carved name to the bench Calloway had pointed out. The puppy sat beside him, still, watching, waiting. The bench, Daniel murmured. The words came softly, more like a thought finding its way out. The puppy's ears flicked. It stood. Not quickly, not urgently, just ready. Then it turned and began walking, not toward the slide, but toward the bench. Daniel followed, without hesitation. Each step felt deliberate, like he was moving through something he didn't fully understand, but trusted anyway. The sand gave way beneath his feet as he crossed the small distance. The bench stood beneath a tree, its wooden slats slightly faded, the metal frame worn from years of use. Ordinary. But now, didn't feel that way. The puppy reached it first, stopped, then sat down, facing the bench, not sniffing, not circling, just sitting. Daniel slowed as he approached. "This is where she used to sit," he said quietly. The puppy didn't move. Its posture remained steady, focused. Daniel stepped closer, his hand brushing lightly against the back of the bench as he moved around it. The wood felt smooth in some places, rough in others, worn by time, by presence, by waiting. He sat down slowly. The bench creaked softly beneath his weight. The puppy shifted closer, settling near his feet. For a moment, nothing happened. No sudden realization. No clear sign. Just quiet. The breeze moved gently through the leaves above, casting soft, shifting shadows across the ground. Daniel exhaled slowly. "What am I supposed to do?" he whispered. The question lingered, unanswered. The puppy lifted its head slightly. Then, it stood, moved closer to the bench, and gently placed its front paws against the wooden seat. Daniel watched, confused at first. "What is it?" The puppy leaned forward, its nose brushing along the edge of the wood. Slowly, carefully. Then it stopped, right at one spot. Still. Daniel leaned forward, his eyes narrowing slightly as he followed the dog's focus. At first, he didn't see anything. Just the grain of the wood, the natural lines, the small imperfections. But then, something different. Faint, subtle. A series of shallow marks. Not scratches. Not random. Intentional. Daniel's breath caught. "No way," he whispered. He shifted closer, his fingers tracing lightly over the surface. There. Barely visible. Carved. Just like the slide. But smaller. Softer. As if someone had been more careful this time. More personal. Daniel leaned in. The letters were harder to make out. Worn down. Almost erased by time. But still there. Still holding on. "Eli," he said quietly. The puppy let out a soft breath. A gentle sound, almost like relief. Daniel's hand remained on the wood, his chest tightening, but not in fear. In something else. Something deeper. "She sat here," he murmured. "Every day." The realization settled slowly, layer by layer. She carved his name here too. The puppy lowered itself back down beside him. Calm. Still. As if it had done what it needed to do. Daniel leaned back slightly, his eyes still fixed on the faint carving. "She didn't just leave," he said softly. "She stayed as long as she could." The breeze passed again. Gentle. Warm. And for a moment, the space didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt full. Full of something that had been waiting to be seen. To be remembered. Daniel swallowed, his throat tight. "She thought he might come back," he whispered. The puppy shifted closer, resting lightly against his leg. Present. Grounding. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. Just a second. And in that quiet, he could almost imagine it. A woman sitting on this very bench. Day after day. Watching. Hoping. Waiting. Not giving up. Even when everything else told her to. He opened his eyes slowly. "He never found his way back," he said. The words were soft, but they carried weight. The puppy lifted its head again, looking at him. Steady. Daniel met its gaze. "But maybe this isn't about that," he added. The thought came gently, not forced. The puppy's eyes didn't waver. Daniel looked back at the bench, at the name, at the small fading letters that had held on for so long. "Maybe it's about being found," he whispered. The words settled into place, and something shifted. Not outside, but inside. A quiet understanding. A soft clarity. The puppy moved again. Slowly. It stepped forward, placing one paw lightly against the bench, right near the carving. Then it looked back at Daniel. Waiting. Daniel watched it. Then nodded. Okay, he said. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, paused, then lowered it again. No, that wasn't right. This wasn't about documenting or proving. It was about something simpler, something more human. He placed his hand gently over the carved name, resting it there, warm against the worn wood. He was here, Daniel said softly. He mattered. The puppy's tail gave a small, quiet movement, the first real wag since they'd arrived. Daniel exhaled, a long, steady breath, and for the first time since yesterday, the tension in his chest began to ease. Not completely, but enough. Enough to breathe. Enough to feel something else. Peace. The breeze picked up slightly, rustling the leaves above. A soft sound, almost like a whisper. Daniel closed his eyes again. Just for a moment. You're not forgotten, he said quietly. The words felt right. Simple, but full. The puppy lowered itself fully now, lying down beside him. Relaxed. Finally, Daniel opened his eyes. The park looked different again. Not heavy, not distant, just still. In a good way, a peaceful way. He sat there for a while longer, not thinking, not questioning, just being there. Then slowly, he stood. The puppy rose with him, stretching lightly, its body loose now, calm. Daniel looked down at it, a small smile forming. You knew exactly where to go, didn't you? The puppy looked up at him, its expression soft. Content. Daniel shook his head slightly. I don't know how you did it, he said, but I'm glad you did. He glanced back at the bench one last time, at the faint carving, at the quiet place that had held onto something for so long. Then he turned. The puppy walked beside him. Not tense, not alert, just normal. As they stepped away, the distance between them and the bench grew. But the feeling didn't fade. It stayed. Warm. Complete. And somewhere deep in that quiet space, something that had been waiting, finally felt at rest. The walk home felt different. Lighter. The same street stretched out ahead. The same buildings, the same passing cars, the same quiet rhythm of the neighborhood, but something had shifted. Not outside. Inside. Daniel walked at an easy pace, his shoulders relaxed, his grip on the leash loose again. The tension that had followed him since yesterday had softened into something quieter. Something settled. Beside him the puppy moved naturally now. Its steps were steady, unhurried. No more hesitation. No more stopping. Just walking. Daniel glanced down at it, a faint smile forming. You're back to normal, he said softly. The puppy looked up briefly, its tail giving a small, easy wag. Then it looked forward again. Content. Daniel exhaled. Guess we both are. The morning had fully opened up now. Sunlight reflected off windows, casting bright patches across the sidewalk. A breeze passed through, carrying the faint scent of fresh bread from a nearby cafe. Life moving forward, as it always did. But Daniel felt it more now. Every detail, every sound, every quiet moment. They reached the apartment building and stepped inside. The hallway greeted them with its familiar stillness, the soft hum of the overhead lights unchanged. Daniel paused for a second, not out of fear, just awareness. He glanced down at the floor where the marks had been the night before. Clean, undisturbed, nothing there. He nodded slightly. Yeah, he murmured. The puppy didn't stop this time. It walked forward confidently, leading the way toward the door. Daniel followed. He unlocked it, pushed it open and stepped inside. The apartment felt the same. Warm, quiet, safe, but now it felt fuller. As if something unspoken had passed through and left behind a kind of calm. The puppy stepped in, moved a few feet forward, then turned in a small circle before lying down on the rug, completely relaxed. For the first time since this began, Daniel watched it for a moment, then closed the door gently behind them. The click echoed softly, but it didn't carry that weight anymore. He set the leash down and walked into the living room, lowering himself onto the couch. His movements were slow, deliberate, but no longer tense. Just thoughtful. He leaned back, letting out a long breath. The kind that came from somewhere deep. Not exhaustion. Release. His eyes drifted toward the window, where sunlight filtered in through the glass, soft and steady. Eli, he said quietly. The name no longer felt heavy. It felt remembered. The puppy lifted its head slightly at the sound, then rested it back down again. Calm. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. I think that was it, he murmured. Not a question. A realization. The pieces had come together. The slide. The name. The bench. The waiting. And the way the puppy had guided him step by step, without force, without confusion. Just instinct. Just knowing. He looked down at the dog again. You felt it, didn't you? The puppy didn't respond. Not in any obvious way. But its presence was enough. Steady. Grounding. Daniel leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. You didn't want me to ignore it, he added. The puppy's ears flicked once. Small. Subtle. But real. Daniel smiled faintly. Yeah, I get it now. He sat there for a while, letting the silence settle around him. Not empty. Not uneasy. Just peaceful. The kind of quiet that didn't ask anything. The kind that allowed you to simply exist within it. After a few minutes, he stood and walked toward the kitchen. He filled a bowl with fresh water again, setting it down in its usual spot. The puppy got up slowly and walked over, drinking this time without hesitation. Normal. Daniel leaned against the counter, watching. Things don't always leave when we think they should, he said quietly. The words felt different now. Not confusing. Not unsettling. Just true. The puppy finished drinking and walked back toward the living room, settling once more onto the rug. Daniel followed, slower this time. He sat down on the floor instead of the couch, leaning back against it. His hand reached out, resting gently on the puppy's side. Warm. Steady. Alive. But sometimes, he continued softly, they just need someone to notice. The puppy's breathing was calm now. Even. Peaceful. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. Not to escape. Just to feel. The memory of the bench came back. But not as something heavy. As something complete. A place where waiting had finally ended. Where a name had been seen again. Remembered again. He opened his eyes slowly. I think we helped, he said. The puppy shifted slightly closer. Daniel smiled. Actually, I know we did. The afternoon passed quietly. No strange sounds. No unexplained moments. Just the simple rhythm of a normal day returning. But it didn't feel like a return. Felt like a continuation. Something had changed. Not dramatically. Not visibly. But deeply. As the light outside began to fade once again, Daniel found himself standing near the window, looking out at the street below. The same place. The same view. But not the same feeling. He glanced back at the puppy. Still resting. Still calm. You know, he said softly, I didn't plan on any of this. The puppy didn't move. But its presence remained constant. Daniel nodded slightly. Guess that's the point. He stepped away from the window and turned off the lamp, letting the room settle into the soft, dim light of early evening. Quiet. Gentle. He walked back to the rug and sat down again, this time closer. The puppy shifted, resting its head lightly against his leg. A simple gesture, but full of meaning. Daniel placed his hand gently over its head, fingers moving slowly through its fur. I'm glad you found me, he whispered. The words came naturally, without hesitation. The puppy didn't react outwardly, but it didn't need to. The bond was already there, built in small moments, in quiet understanding, in trust that didn't need explanation. Daniel leaned back against the couch again, his hand still resting on the puppy. The room remained still, peaceful, and in that stillness, there was no tension left, no unanswered questions, just a quiet sense of something completed, something honored, something gently laid to rest. The name on the slide would remain, the carving on the bench would fade with time, but the meaning, that wouldn't disappear. Not now, not anymore, because someone had stopped, someone had listened, And a small quiet guide had made sure of it. Daniel closed his eyes once more, a soft breath leaving his chest. And beside him, the puppy stayed, loyal, present, unwavering, not just a companion, but something more. A reminder that sometimes the ones who can't speak still understand everything, and sometimes they lead us exactly where we need to go, even when we don't yet know why. The evening settled gently around them, and in that quiet space, their bond became something unbreakable, not formed in words, but in trust, in presence, in something deeper than either of them could explain. And somehow, that was enough.